Hi everybody, it's Kat back again, and today I'm going to talk about grieving and basically the adoption grieving that I went through when I reached reunion. It's probably going to end up being a 3-part series just because there are so many different facets to the grieving process that I went through. There were different phases and different feelings and different times and everything, and this is going to be from beginning until now, so for the past 3 years. So with that said, let's just get right into it. My name is Kat Davald. I'm a 47-year-old birth mom to my 31-year-old daughter, who I've been in reunion with for a little over 3 years now. So I just wanted to put a couple things out there. First, this is not anything having to do with adoption relinquishment grieving. That is completely different. This is the grieving that I went through when I reached reunion, and all the different phases of that. For adoption relinquishment, there were some similarities, I feel like there was, but basically adoption relinquishment grieving, it starts with denial. It's basically, for me it was, oh, it doesn't bother me, I'm okay with it, and everything like that. And then there was also anger, and my anger, the way I showed it was I was bitchy, I was snippy, and I partied a lot to kind of suppress everything. I didn't want to think about, everything that I went through. And part of it was I was told not to. So, but that's a whole different story. So, but that was part of my anger issues during adoption relinquishment. Then there's daydreaming. And I remember I used to stare at my daughter's picture. The only pictures that I had of her were her newborn picture, and a picture was when she was, I think like around 14 months old. And I used to stare at them and just wonder, where is she? What is she doing? What does she look like? What is, everything. So that was part of it. Number 4 is depression. And I think depression for me started with the day I gave birth, and carried through all the way, without me knowing it. Like, I was in denial that I was depressed too. It was weird. Like, I didn't realize I was depressed all these years, until I reached reunion. Like, there was a lot of realizations that came with reunion. And then the other part, of grieving for relinquishment purposes is acceptance. And that kind of happened for me like 10 years after, 10 years in. My daughter was 10, I was 25. It was kind of like, okay, well, there's nothing to do. Like, I can't do anything to change it. Like, I started to feel a little bit better. It's not that birthdays were easy, but I wouldn't sink into this hole for such a long time. Things got a little bit easier to handle. But it was still denial. I mean, it was complete denial. Anyways, that is relinquishment. That's not what I'm talking about here. Here I am talking about when I reached reunion, the grieving that I went through. And I tell you, it was probably tenfold of what happened what happened over and above relinquishment. Because when I relinquished, I was 15. And the adults told me to forget about it, you'll move on, this is for the best, blah, 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 and everything. But now, I'm an adult, and I'm a free-thinking adult, and I live by myself, and, I'm more aware of everything. and coercion and all that type of stuff. So it's completely different, and you get these realizations during a reunion and everything. So I don't want to go too far into it, as I want to step it along my timeline for the whole grieving process that I've been going through. The other thing is I'm pretty free that I'm in all these birth mom groups and everything like that. And people post stuff all the time. And there was a post a while ago that somebody had posted, and it was a quote from the book, The Girls Who Went Away. And that book, I read it from cover to cover. There was a lot of similarities in it for me, and I cried the whole way through it. I never bought a copy of it, but I read it on Kindle. So I want to read you that quote because it really sums up adoption, relinquishment, grief as a whole. All right, so here, let me get the trusty glasses on because now I'm wearing my contacts and now I need my readers. So it's from the book by Ann Fessler, The Girls Who Went Away. It's on page 208. And the quote is, "Studies that have examined the grief of relinquishing mothers have identified a sense of loss that is unique and often prolonged. In one such study, the grief was likened to the separation loss experienced by a parent whose child is missing, or by a person who is told their loved one is missing in action. Unlike grief over the death of a child, which is permanent and for which there is an established grieving process, the loss of a child through adoption has no clear end and no social affirmation that grief is even an appropriate response." And I should have probably read that quote to that other video I did with the crazy lady that told me to grieve my daughter as if she was dead. But it's appropriate for this one too. So yeah, grieving is for an adoptee is so much different. So with that said, let's get into my timeline, and I'm going to go through the steps. And there were 10 steps that I have been through on this journey of reunion so far. I'm going to go through them. I'm going to list them for you now, but we're only going to probably go over the first 3. So they are the happy initial contact grief. And it sounds backwards that it's happy initial contact, but it was definitely grief because I was scared out of my mind. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I cried like all the time. Like I found her, it was the beginning of the roller coaster, and everybody calls this a roller coaster, which it is, and so I call it part of the grieving process because it's where all the emotions started to come back, all the feelings and everything, and then it was smacking your face because now I don't want to say I never thought about my daughter, but it wasn't so front and center as it was when she was first born. Because don't forget, this is 28 years later. So, I was able to function as an adult and go to work and everything and not have that, cloud hanging over me. But then, now, I find her, and it's all I can think about. Because now, okay, what does she look like? Is she okay? Does she want to know me? And so that was the first stage of the grieving for me. A lot of people call it the honeymoon period. That's what it's pretty much referred to in a lot of books and everything like that. But for me, it was more than just a honeymoon period, because for me, there were other pieces of grief that I went through during the honeymoon period, because like I feel like our honeymoon period was probably about a year, because we took things very slow and everything like that. And then, I mean, maybe even a year and a half. Now it's like 2 years. Definitely we solidified and we were super comfortable with each other, and it was kind of like, okay, we just get into this groove now. So it was part of my honeymoon period, this first stage of grief. The second stage was reliving relinquishment and all the memory recognition. Everything came back. Everything came back. Things that I had forgotten about started coming back. This is another video too, but I reached out to her father, her birth father, and I connected them, and dealing with him and all the craziness with him, that brought back things that I had forgotten about. Like, my memory just started triggering, bam, 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 and I'd be like, oh my God, I forgot about that. And then it was heavy, because it was things that I didn't want to remember, and I realized why I forgot about them in the first place. So you start to relive relinquishment, because now she's back, but she's an adult, and you don't have that baby back, but you relive everything. It's like, okay, you just start to think about all that stuff. I don't know why. I don't know why the mind works that way and puts us through that. But that was the second part for me. The happy initial contact, that probably lasted 6 months. And that was during that was a time when I would tell everybody. Like, I was telling everybody that came into the bar, because I was still bartending. So I told the story over and over and over and over again. And then this memory recognition, that probably started about a month in, because the first month is just complete elation. Like, you know, you just, like, want to know everything. And then I think because she asked the hard questions about the adoption and the choice and her father, and that is what made me start to have to relive everything. So then that started to overlap with the happy. So I was happy and elated, but then I was miserable and crying all the time, because I was just remembering everything. And then, oh, this part was rough. I think it was about 9 months in, and I really started to grieve the loss of raising her, and the loss of knowing her, and the loss of not being there for her when she was little, and the loss of not being mom, and the loss of not having other children, and the loss of just, you know, being that person to her, you know, that I'll never be. I never could be. And not that, you know, I want to, like, take anybody's space right now, but it was grieving that. And it was letting it go and getting it out of my system. Finally, after 28, I mean, at this point, it was probably 29 years, I was finally able to start this process, because I never did. There was nobody that said anything. You know, it was just, you know, you forget about it. You don't talk about it. And it's not something that I thought of either, because And I think it's because I was told, you don't, go there. So I was finally able to start that uh, loss of raising her and knowing her as a little girl. And I was able to go through that grief. After that was probably about 6 months that I went through that. And these all like kind of overlapped with each other. So like you would start, and then this one would start too, and then this would start, and then this one would end, and then so it's all kind of overlapping. And I want to swear, but YouTube won't let me. But to say that it's a roller coaster, I mean, those wooden roller coasters where you just have this little bar over your lap and you feel like you're going to fly out of it? That is what adoption reunion grieving is like. It's just all over the place. The fourth part that I started to go through was the what ifs and the what could have been. And I still do this. And I probably won't ever stop, but back then it was in line with the loss of raising her grief. So the what ifs were, what if I kept her? Knowing the person that I am, what if? What could have been? Where could we have been? How could this have worked out? How could it have been? And just knowing the person that I am today. So I'll get to that when I get there. But that was another part of it. It was then that I really started to get involved in all these groups on Facebook, because I was searching for all kinds of different help. And there's not a lot. And that's part of the reason why I started this channel, because there's not a lot. Especially for birth moms. There's a lot for adoptees, and there's a whole ton for adoptive parents, but there's nothing for birth mothers. So books, I was looking for books. And a lot of them were just memoirs and stories. Like, I don't need that. Like, I need help. I need help transversing this, going through this journey. Like, how do I do it? What are the steps? What do I do? What do I say? How do I act? So, I was looking for those types of things, and I would search for groups like on Facebook, forums, and that type of stuff. And I found one website, Musings of the Lame, and she has been around for a long time. She's in some of the groups that I'm in, and so I read that website, and I bookmarked that website. So I found Brave Love, and not a fan of them because of what they actually stand for, and I don't agree with what they stand for. But they had these birth mother dinners and stuff, and I wanted to try to connect with other birth mothers to like just go on this journey and like figure it out and like talk to people and be like, how do you do this? And that ended up being a nightmare. Because I went down to New Jersey. From Connecticut, I went to New Jersey, and it was 2 people. One of the girls, her son at that point was like 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that, and the other one had just given her child up. She was a bubbling mess, and I'm here with a 28-year-old, and both of these girls are under my daughter's age, so it was not what it ended up being. After that, then I finally started to find things that were teaching me. And I started to learn about the past. I started to learn about the BSE, the baby scoop era. And I learned about Georgia Tan, and I started to learn about what happened in Australia and Ireland and England and all over and here in Canada, and I was mortified because my adoption took place in 1990, but there were so many similarities with what happened during the baby scoop era and everything. So, you know, then that started to happen, and I started to learn about adoption, how it used to be, and how it's changed, but how it hasn't changed either. And then you start to learn about adoption trauma, and you start to learn about the trauma that we have as birth mothers, because then I was like, oh, well, I'm not the only one. And I didn't realize I had trauma. I didn't realize I had PTSD from all of this. And then to go along with that, and more importantly, is the trauma that my daughter could possibly have. And learning all the things that, an adoptee thinks about or has the potential to think about. And, how they possibly might feel and all of that. And I'm just like, oh my God, what did I do? Then comes along with the guilt of doing this. Like, I did this to my daughter, I didn't fight, I didn't stand up, so all of that. Then, after that, then you start to get angry. And I started to get angry. I started to get angry at the agencies, especially, because the cost of adoption, the coercion, and the coercion that hasn't stopped, so I started to get really angry about everything that has to do with adoption. And then you start, learning about the tactics that HAPs are doing these days. HAP stands for Hopeful Adoptive Parents, and how they, just contact women who say they're scared of having their baby and try to buy their baby from them. Like, there's so much. If you're not in this, like, it's amazing the lengths that people go through to get a baby, and it boggles my mind. So the anger. I got really angry. In my birth mother groups, I would, really go after people and say things, not mean to them, but like, be like, your child has trauma. Like, you've got to realize this. And, now, if they don't want to listen, I don't push it. I don't try to shove it down people's throats. Like, if other people are saying it, like, I don't have the emotional wherewithal to continue to, try to teach people. I don't want to force it on people. I don't want to make them listen. That's why I'm making these videos. Because if you want to learn about it and you want to listen, then here they are. If you don't, then you can pause and you can get out of my channel. I mean, that's why I'm doing it. Because if you want to learn, it's here. If not, then goodbye. But honestly, it started to wear on me. It started to affect me as a person, because I would just be angry all the time. And then I finally realized, like, I had to just kind of, like, let it go. So the anger was a big part of it. And I would just get angry at the system. And then after that, it was understanding and acceptance. It was basically, okay, I understand the role I played in my daughter's possible trauma. Okay, I understand that the role I played in my own trauma. I understand that there's no going back and fixing it. And it's just acceptance. It's acceptance of everything before that, I'm not going to be my child's mother. We have a great relationship. It's building, it's budding. We're great friends. We speak all the time. So it's acceptance of what we have and what we could possibly have in the future that's not going to be, you know, a mother-daughter type of relationship. So it's all of that. And then came healing after that. And healing was basically for me, I meditate every once in a while. Binaural beats help me too. So it's basically just not letting everything affect me and my relationship with her, because that was a big thing too. It was like, I don't want my anger, my sadness, my grief, nothing to affect the relationship that I could possibly have with my daughter. You know, so that was a big thing for me too. So that was part of healing, and it's just, and it's not that I've healed from the relinquishment of my daughter, but it's that I've healed from, how do I put it? I've healed from knowing that it won't ever be what it was initially supposed to be. So it just kind of, again, just acceptance, like, it's all good. So after that, it's moving forward. So now it's, okay, we just go forward. So, you know, new little things are going to come up all the time, and they do. They're still popping up, and there's always going to be probably little new things, and just settling into a routine and getting to know each other and having a relationship and building a relationship and just being in each other's lives from here on out, hopefully. So that is my reunion grief timeline, and I will go into everything a lot more in depth as we go along. One part that I did not talk about because it has not affected me, although I know other people it has affected, is the grieving process of a secondary loss. So I am lucky and I am thankful that me and my daughter are in a good relationship. Will it always be this way? I don't know. I hope so. I hope that we won't ever have a secondary loss. I, for sure, will never not want a relationship with her. I will never cut her off. I will never not be available to her. I don't know if, especially with these videos, something might piss her off and she doesn't want to talk to me again. I don't know. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. I mean, I would hate for anything to happen. And I'm not going to wish anything to happen. And I'm not going to talk about something as if it were to happen. If it were to ever get there, then we'll go through it then. But I certainly don't hope so. But regardless, some people do go through a reunion and something happens, either the birth mother or the child. And because I'm speaking from a birth mother point of view, it's more than likely the child, in your case, because you're probably watching as a birth parent, has decided that they don't want a relationship with you. Something has happened. Something has triggered them to cut off communication with you. So I have not dealt with that. But that's a different piece of grieving. And I don't know how to talk about it, and I'm not going to talk about it because it hasn't happened to me. But just know that it can happen. And there are other people in the groups that I'm in that have had that happen. So if you're looking for something, support, then find me on Facebook by my name and check out the groups that I'm in. I haven't posted my groups just because I'm sure it's fine, but I'm going to ask them and just make sure that it's okay that I post links to them in my description. So, but for now, just go through Facebook and find me, and then you can go through there and find the groups other people have. All right, so that was actually a lot longer than I expected it to be. So I'm going to end this video here, and I'm going to start a new one, just because I don't want them to get too long. So I'm going to start a new one so that they're divided up a little bit in bite-sized chunks. It's not even bite-sized. I mean, my videos are always between like 20 and 30 minutes. So I'm going to do that right now. So thank you for watching this video, and I will talk to you soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.